guys, this is Karen from Blue Rooster Farm, and today we are doing our final dish mat of the month, and this is for the month of January. And so gather up your supplies if you want to make this. This is going to be a cute one. So what I have is a dish mat, and I always say if you've not seen these videos before, find something really inexpensive. Hobby Lobby has had in the past, and they probably still do have really good prices on their dish mats, especially when they're at 50% off. And so if you're looking in the spring, the fall, the winter, the seasonal ones are really good prices. Now, if you go into other areas where they're like the chicken ones, and there's the blue and the white ones and things like that, they aren't on sale as often and they're higher. But if you can get them 40-50% off, they're really a good price. Now, I just ran across these at Ollie's, and Ollie's is just a discount store in our area. I don't know if it is in your area too, but there were two of these for $4.99, so they were just $2.50 each. And for $2.50, it's hard to purchase that foam and then have a piece of fabric for the bottom, and then of course what we're going to be putting on the top. So it's just less expensive to go ahead and purchase a cheap dish mat, and that way we can just use one of the sides for the back of it. And if you don't have a dish mat and can't find one, you can either take batting, old towels, this foam batting that you find everywhere, and just make a little sandwich with a layer of fabric for the backing, and then whatever you're using for the absorbent material in the middle, and then we're going to be doing the top part. So that would be fine too. But this one I thought was really pretty, and I had one in here that I've already used. And so let's see if we can take these little plastic things off without tearing up our mat too much. And I know I should be using scissors, but I am just one of those girls that likes to pop them. Okay, so this one has a light blue side, and then it has this side, and I think this looks kind of like snowflakes. So I think I'm going to keep this for the back and then use this to sew on. And so I'll get rid of this tag right here. And we'll just cut that right off. And if you watched my last video with the sew sampler box, you might have seen that I shared with you in that some new tags. And so I think I'm going to be using one of these new tags for a tag on this dish mat. So I'll be getting that made too. So let's set this aside. We've got that ready. And then you notice that I have some blue fabrics. This line is called Crystal Lane from Moda. It's Bunny Hill Designs, and I love her fabric. She's got some really pretty different lines of fabric out and different designs. And this one goes back a couple of years, and I had a layer cake of it. And so I thought this would be perfect for winter and January, and for what we're making today. It has an assortment of darks and light blues. This one even has snowmen on it, so we know it's a winter theme. We have florals too in lighter blues, different stripes and polka dots. We have really dark navy blues. We also have kind of a tannish brown that comes in, and there are actually some different ones that just have that brown, and I think there's a darker brown as well. Let me look. Or maybe I just have the light ones. Here we go. Just like this. And so they're really pretty, and I think this will work just perfect. Now, of course, we're not going to need all of this, and you can definitely use your scraps, and that's what I was going to use until I saw I had this, and I thought, well, this all goes along really nicely, so I can use this. Now, because this has lights and it has darks, this is going to be perfect for what I'm using. Let me show you the pattern. Okay, so here is what I have envisioned. I've made this pattern right here, and we are going to be making a dish mat with snowman faces on it. And so what we have are snowballed blocks with the light background fabric, and then we have 9 patches in between them. And so I think this looks really, really cute. And as of right now, here's what the pattern's going to look like that you'll find in the description box. And again, this is free, but if there's anything that we come across as we work this, because this is the first time I'm making it as well, we might be changing up a few things, and that's fine. It always works out in the end. So let's first of all, and I also want to remind you, you do need to have some of this Heat and Bond or Wonder Under or some sort of iron-on adhesive for fabrics for applique. These noses, and right now I just have black eyes, but I'm thinking maybe buttons would be cute too. So I haven't decided exactly what we're going to do with the eyes yet. It may be buttons that I'll use, but I am going to applique on the nose for sure. And if you look at this, all of these noses are different, and we can just free cut those out. Well, let's take a look and see what we need to do first. So I am going to choose some fabric, and we're going to be making 9 patches, and those 9 patches are 2-inch strips, or 2-inch squares, I should say. But we're going to be using strips to make them, to make it even easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull out a couple of different colored fabric. I've got a dark, a light, let's put a tan, and there's 2 snowman patterns. I like to kind of have different patterns too. I might change this tan up for this tan here. That way I won't have 2 of the same designs, but in different colorways. And let's see, I think I want, I've got that color blue. I want a medium too. This would be perfect. Okay, so we're going to just start with, well, I think I'll add some more fabrics because I think I can cut, well, we're just going to cut 4 fabrics at a time. And so what I'm going to do is just line these up, and with my ruler, I'm going to cut 2-inch strips. And I'm going to line my ruler up just at the base of those points on that clipped edge. That way I know I've got a full 2 inches. So I'm gonna do 1, I'll do 2 of these. And I could do all of this, just, I'll just have fewer fabrics included in my dish mat. And maybe even one of them was all I needed. So I'm going to set these 2 aside. I'm going to get another set. And this time, let's do this one. That's my dark. Make sure I don't use the same one twice. This is my light. Here is my medium. And I need a brown, I think, don't I? Yep, let's do, I've got 2 snowman tan. Oh, you know what? Let's do this one. This has got some tan in it too. So we're going to cut this one also. And that was 4, so we've got 8 different fabrics, and I think I'm just going to do 1 strip of this one. Make sure they're all lined up correctly. And you might be hearing that beeper. That is my oven telling me the hot rolls that I made earlier are done. So as soon as I get this cut, I'm going to go check them. Got several things going on today. Got laundry going. I made 2 pies. I've got hot rolls and buns in the oven. And I have a coffee cake that I just put some frosting on. So we are getting ready to spend time with our family over the New Year's. So just getting all of this done. Okay, so I've got these strips and I'm going to bring you right back. Okay, they weren't quite ready. We've got about 10 minutes before it starts dinging at us again. So let's go ahead and do another set. So let's use this one here. Let's put a stripe in. Let's get a light blue. I don't think we've used this polka dot yet. That's cute. And we need a medium blue. Let's see what we have here. What patterns? Okay, I can do a that looks good. And let's give this one a 2-inch cut too. And then we should have enough to get started. So 2 inches, the length of that layer cake. So that's a 10-inch square, and we've got a 2 by 10-inch piece here. So what we're going to do is we're going to be making our 9-patch blocks by strip piecing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 3 of these strips together, and I'll just choose different colors. Let's see, we could probably use a tan there. Maybe over here. And I'm going to sew right here a 1/4 inch away. So I'll just be putting this piece like this, sewing a 1/4 inch away from that edge, opening it up. And then this piece, I'll do the same thing, sewing it a 1/4 inch away from the edge. And so I'll do several sets like that, just kind of making sure I have a nice variety of colors, and then I'll bring you right back. All right, I made 4 sets because I went and calculated, and that was, I just have 1 set left. That 1 set that I cut 2 of, I have that left, and we can use this for the snowball corners. So I sewed 4 sets together, and I tried to have different color fabrics in the centers. The other fabrics we can turn whichever direction, but just trying to get a variety of colors in each of those centers. Now, according to my pattern, and this is based on a Hobby Lobby size mat, and I believe they're like 14 by 20, 21, something like that. And so my mat is 15 by 20. And so it's going to be very similar, but I should be able to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the 9 patch blocks in there. And each block has 3 of these, has 3 strips, which are going to be a 2-inch slice off of this strip set. So I'm going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 slices on a from a strip set. Now, these will cut 2 inches, will be 5 slices. So we'll have 5, 10, 15, and 20. So we're going to have plenty right here to make our 9 patches, if this is the right number of 9 patches that we need for our dish mat. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to cut these, and I'm going to do one at a time, just that way I feel like I can get them a little straighter. And we are going to cut them 2 inches. Now, when I sewed these, I made sure I started right, I butted the edges right up against each other because I wanted to use every bit of this fabric. These are 10 inches long, so if we cut them into 2-inch slices, we are going to use every bit of that fabric up. So be careful when you're sewing, or if you don't think you can be as accurate, just make another set. We could just turn this into another set and have extras that way. And it may be that we're going to need that if I end up cutting this and finding out I have a smaller one accidentally at the end. So we'll do what we can here, and we'll slice all of these into 2-inch slices. Now, when I do that, I line my edge right here on the 2-inch line. Then I find a line, and I'm right there in that glare, aren't I? And that one too. Find a spot where we're not in the glare. How about over here? Let's try that. So I then find a line on my ruler, it doesn't matter which one, and I try to make it right on top of that seam. And then I hope, if I've got everything nice and straight when I was sewing, this one's going to be parallel with this line right here. And these should also be parallel with a line. And if everything is coming out nice and straight, then I will cut. So let me go ahead and put that on there. It looks like we've got parallel lines. I've got a 2-inch line right there, and we're gonna cut. And there we have one of our slices. So let's do 4 more out of this section, and then I'll finish up all of the other cutting. And you just want to make sure you are perpendicular with these seams. And if you are a real confident sewer, you can stack I would just stack a couple of your strip sets together, but I just find that I'm not always that accurate at cutting if I do that. And then we're going to hope that this one is 2 inches, and it is very good. And if it's just a tiny bit off, it's okay, as long as it's going to have enough for a seam allowance. So let me just keep on going. All right, and there we go. This one's just a little shy of the 2 inches, but I think we can get it to work. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to lay out our 9-patch blocks. And let me just use this design board here. Okay, get that right there where you can see it. So we can just start playing around and figure out how we want these to go, and try to choose a strip from 3 of the piles, and that way you won't have any matching fabric in a 9-patch. And let's see, I've already got that one in there. Let's do this one here. Now I do have the Snowman fabric is directional, but it does not bother me if it is upside down on these small blocks. If you are really particular about it, then I would suggest you pay really careful attention, or you just cut 2-inch squares and piece all of them together. And so I've used this for a center, this for a center. Now I'm using this for a center. And you know, some of them look a little heavy in different areas, and you know, that's okay, it's patchwork. We can always change it up if it bothers us too much. I think they look all a little different. You don't want them to look the same, just kind of spread out just a little bit, and that looks fine to me. So now what we need to do is, let's see, I am looking at this one still. That's a little better. Okay, so now what we need to do is I need to go to the sewing machine and I need to sew these 3 strips together. Now I did not, when I ironed, I just ironed in one direction because I knew once I went to piece them, I might be needing to change directions. Now it could be that they line up correctly, but I think I'm going to be flipping seams as I'm sewing, and that's okay. I like my seams to nest, and let me show you if you're fairly new to sewing. When a seam is nesting, that means one of the seam allowances going this direction, it's pressed that way. The other one is pressed the opposite direction. And when you put those seams on top of each other, it's nice and flat and they just lock together. And that is what we like to do when we sew, so that it just will hold its position and we will get nice points. That means those corners right there will match up really nicely. So that is what I'm going to be doing. So if it looks like on this next one here, nope, those work. Ooh, I won't have to change any there. Let's see if these work. You know, I may get really, really lucky in just the direction that I put these. Those are working. Okay, these 2. Okay, so these 2 have the seams going this way and the same direction on the back fabric. So I'm just going to need to flip one this way, and I can just finger press it if I want, and then sew it and then press it afterwards. But both of these will need to be flipped going the opposite direction. All right, well, I'll bring you back when I have all of these 9 patches sewn together. And here we have all 6 of our 9 patch blocks finished, and I've just pressed them all in one direction, and that works just fine for these. And so when you press, make sure you don't have any of the little pleats in there. Be sure they're nice and flat. So now we have those. We need to do our snowman faces, and this block is the snowball block. It has 4 corners that have flip and stitch squares placed on them. So these squares need to be 5 inches, and our squares that go in the corners are going to be 1.5 inch. So I'm going to choose, I've got a couple of different fabrics here. I could use all the same fabric, but since there are 6 faces and my layer cake doesn't have multiples of the lights, I am just going to have to divide up and do 2 or 3. Let's see. I could do 2 out of, yeah, I think I'll just do 3 different prints, and I'll just do 2 of each. That way we'll have 6. So those are the 3 that I chose. They're nice and light. And if your line that you're using doesn't have a good light that you want to use, just choose a basic white out of your stash and call it good. That would be fine. So we're just going to cut these in half so that we have a 5.5 inch strip on one side, or I'm sorry, a 5 inch strip on one side. These are 10 inches. We need to cut them down so that they are 5 inches square. So I'm just going to take a half of this layer cake, these 3 layer cakes, cut them right there. This is just extra fabric. Then I'm going to cut this one into a 5 inch by 5 inch square. And this right here should also be a 5" by 5" square. And I can just take those tips off since we had that. So there we go. So we have 6 5" squares. And then I told you a while ago, we could just use these extra strips that we cut and make our corner squares for our snowballs. So I'm just going to stack these up like this. And I am going to cut this down to a 1.5" strip. And if your rotary cutter can't cut through 4, just do 2 or 1 at a time, whatever works. But I should be able to do 4. So I've got 1.5 inches on my line right here, and I'm just taking this 1/2 inch off. And that is scrap or trash, I guess. And let's see. Each block, we have 6 blocks. Each block has 4 corners, so we're going to need 24 corners. If I cut this, let's see how many 1.5 inches I get. Let me think here. Let's go ahead and do that real quick. And I'm going to get a smaller ruler for that. So 1.5 inches. One. Six. I can get 6 of them. 6 times 4 is 24, which is perfect. It's exactly what we need. Okay, so what we're going to do is, let me get another design board. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to lay these snowball blocks out. And you can decide if you have stripes, if you want them to go up and down or across. It doesn't matter to me. I might have one going one way and one going the other. Okay, then since we had 4 fabrics, I think I'm just going to use one of each of those fabrics for each corner of each block. So that will work perfect. And so basically all we're doing is just putting a scrappy corner on each of the 4 corners of these squares. We're not caring what color it is. It won't matter. Okay, now we have all of our squares with corners laid out in the corner. And so in order to sew these, we could really easily put a dab of glue on each corner because that's going to be cut off. And just do this. And if you do not have the seam tape on the bed of your sewing machine, you'll need to draw lines on each of your blocks, on each of these squares. So what you'll do is you'll take a ruler or a straight edge, and from corner to corner, you are going to use a pencil or a friction pen. Let's see if this friction pen is working. And actually, that's not a friction pen. It would be okay to use just because this is the seam line, but it is dark, and so I don't want to have it accidentally showing up. And you're going to draw a diagonal in all 4 corners, just like this, a diagonal line. And if you wanted to, you could do this before you laid these on the square, just your whole stack at once. That would be fine. I'm not going to be marking mine because I do have the seam tape, which is really easy to use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my sewing machine and I will stitch right on that line and on all of those lines. Okay, I'm going to do all of these blocks and then I'll bring you back. And here I have all of our snowball blocks. All I've done right now is I've just taken and pressed this corner up and these all out, just like that. Now what I need to do is I need to trim this 1/4 inch away from that seam line, and I will have these all finished. So let me do that real quick. Now remember, when you do these snowballed corners, you want to make sure that when you press this back, that the background fabric is covered up just like that. You don't want it hanging out more than it should be. You want it to be matching up with those corners. So just be real careful about that and make sure that those are done correctly. And I've just about got these all done. Now, I debated on whether to go ahead and put the snowman faces on now or wait until after it's all put together and then do it once it's on the drying mat. And I think I'm going to wait until it's on the drying mat. So I am going to piece all of these blocks together first, and then we will put the faces on the snowman. So what we can do now, let me just take this one here and move it. And let's take this and let's go ahead and lay out our blocks. And while I was sewing a while ago, I also decided I'm going to use buttons, and I did find some buttons that I think will work. So we need to start with a 9 patch and then alternate. So here's a 9 patch, here's a snowman, and I'm going to change where these fabrics are in which corner as I go. That way they don't look like they're all the same. And actually I think I'm going to put, this is one fabric and this is another, so I'll kind of alternate my fabrics too. And here we have the polka dot. And again, I'll look at my blocks and see if I need to turn my 9 patches once I have everything laid out. Actually, I think I'll go ahead and do this one going up and down. Yep. Like that. Okay, I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. Again, this is scrappy, so let me move you back just a little bit. I think we've got most of it on now. Okay, so I'm just kind of looking through the lens, and to me it looks like there's not a whole bunch of one color in one area. It looks like it's pretty much spread out, so I think that looks good. This one right here, I might flip this way just to kind of break up the dark down here at the bottom. Okay, so I think this is going to be my layout. I'm not going to worry too much about it. So what I need to do now is go to my sewing machine, and I need to stitch the rows together. So what I will do is I will go over and I will put right sides together. I will match them up. These seams are not going to match, so that's really nice about this block. I will then take these two right here, sew them together, and then I'll take these pairs and sew them together. Then I'll have a full 4 block strip. I'll do the same with this row and with this row, and I'll bring you back when I have those 4 rows completely sewn. And here I have my rows all sewn together, just like that. All right, so I'm going to set this aside for just a second, and we're going to bring out our mat. Now we're going to do a Quilt-As-You-Go on our mat. And remember, you can use any side as the side that you want to put your fabric on, and leave whichever side you want for the backing. And since I thought that kind of looked like snowflakes and that coloring coordinates somewhat, I'm just going to leave this pretty side as the backing. And so we're going to be covering this part right here. So the first thing we want to do is we want to find the center, and we want to find the center out here too. So just the center line here and the center line here. So we can do that real easily by just folding it in half and taking a pin of some sort. You can use any kind, it will be covered up. I would just advise against any kind of felt marker. Nothing that you want to have bleed through at another time or after it's been washed. So mark that. Then we'll just take a long straight edge and we'll match up those lines just like so. Right here, right here. And you know, the mats themselves are not perfect. They are put together pretty quickly. And so don't always go by the fabric and the lines on the fabric. They're not always accurate. But if you do notice, like this has a grid, you may look and see, does it look like I have about the same amount down here? Do I have a straight edge over here and over here? And if that looks like it's right, then you are in good shape. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just centering your blocks so that you'll get the same amount of excess on all, top and bottom, and on the left and the right side. So, and there might be a difference in the amount of fabric that you're going to have on the sides versus the top and bottom. But we want the sides to try to have about the same amount of fabric and the top and bottom to have about the same amount of fabric. So there's my line right there. And we're going to do the same thing. I think I'm just going to fold this the opposite way so I don't have to open it up to mark it. And mark it there, and mark it, whoops, here. Then let's open that up and match those markings with a straight edge. Where is it? There it is. There it is. And again, you know, just see if it's looking like it's parallel. Is this going perpendicular? And that's really, you know, important. There you want to have it as perpendicular as you can. And I think that will do it. So there is our middle point right there, and here's all the middle points on the sides. Now we're going to take our middle block, and we're going to start with the middle and then work outwards. So we're going to start with this block right here, and since this one has a seam right here, we know that that is going to be right on our center line here. But we need to have a center line on the edges too. So I can easily do that by finger pressing. And so I just put the corners together and then just take my fingernail and just kind of press it with my fingernail so I have a nice line there. Same thing over here. Just with my fingernail do that. And then I'll just take this strip and I'll lay it right here on my line, just like that. And I am going to make sure right here, that is my line, and This is my line, and then this is right on the seam. And you can adjust as needed. Okay, and once you think you have it laid out correctly, and that looks good to me, I kind of eyeball the sides that look like it's about the same. Do the top and the bottom look like they're about the same? And I might even take this bottom one and see, oh, this is going to put perfectly. It looks like we may not have to add any border, or we might add a small amount of a border down here just to make sure everything's caught. Or we can trim it down to the size that is even with this. We'll see what we do. So what I'm going to do is put a couple of pins. Well, actually, I don't have anything to pin yet. Let me go ahead and take this bottom piece. So this is the way this one goes when we had it laid out. So I'm going to go right sides together just by flipping it up like that. Oh, and I do want to say that when I pressed these blocks together, these strips together, I pressed toward the snowball block because it seemed like that had fewer seams. You could do either one. You can press toward the snowball block or you can press toward the 9 patch, whichever you want to do, but just do it on all of them. And that way, when you put them like this, those seams are going to nest. And that way you won't have, it'll just kind of lay just right in the right spot. And those points are going to be really nice. So matching those seams right on top, and you can just feel where they nest right there. I can put a pin here because I'm going to be adding this to the bottom, so I'm going to be stitching this right here. So let's do that. And you want to match them up as good as you can because you want those corners to match as good as they will. So I can feel right there that that's nested. That one's a little small. Let me get a little longer. Okay, and this seam right here. And you can pull one or loosen one till you get it to feel like it's nested, and that's nested right there. Okay. And I am going to put one more down here. Now when I take this to the sewing machine, I am going to be stitching 1/4 inch away from this edge right here. And I also want to just go ahead and I'll just go ahead and sew right off the edges. That's fine. So let me do that and I'll bring you right back. And there we have our first 2 rows sewn on, and that looks good. And if I look down here, as you can see, it is not quite covering the end. So I probably will go ahead, let me just see if I can pull that down a little bit. I probably will go ahead and add a little, like a 1 inch or 1.5 inch strip down here. And I imagine it's going to be the same up there. We are still going to have a strip over here and over here because this is definitely shorter, and that's fine. I had originally planned to have a little border all the way around. So if you're new to this, and I always forget that I don't have the same people watching these videos all the time, on my machine, I'm just using a quilting needle, and it goes through this foam dish mat just fine. Also, I lengthen my stitches when I'm sewing on this because there's a little bit of a drag with this fabric or this fabric. And so if I lengthen the stitches just a little bit, it helps pull it through a little smoother. I just use white thread, and as you can see, it is stitching really nicely. You don't see the thread, but you see the pattern, and it's just a straight line there from where I've sewn already. And so it's doing a really nice job. So let's go ahead and add our last strip. This one goes together real nicely after you get the blocks done. There's not a whole lot of construction on your dish mat. Most of it is done beforehand. And then of course when we applique the noses and so on the eyes, or applique the eyes, whichever you prefer to do, that will take a little bit of time too. So now I'm going to put this, I just check it to make sure this is the way I want it, and it is. So right sides together. Again, we're going to match up our seams there, and they should nest, and we're going to put pins in it. And then I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and do the same thing. So a 1/4 inch away from this edge. And let's see how we did here. Push that back, and that looks good. All right, so looks like we have quite a bit of space up here. As I was sewing this on, I was thinking, oh, I might just trim this one off this time to be the same size. But I think I'm going to go ahead and add a border since we do have quite a bit of space here. But before we add the border, what I want to do, right now we have quilting going here and here. I want to put some quilting this way as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and stitch in the ditch, and I'll put some pins in so that I don't get pleats, but I will pull this right here, pin it, and then pull this down here, just making sure that sometimes when your foot is going along that, it will start getting fabric pleats. And if we go ahead and pull it, not tight or anything, but just pull that looseness out of it, we can keep those pleats from forming. So let's just do that on the ends of each of these. And with this being puffy, a lot of times you'll notice that you can have quite a bit of fabric that you weren't aware of. It's just puffed up higher. And that will keep us from getting pleats. Just push it that way. And then we will have quilting on all of those outside of those blocks. Okay, so I'm just going to top stitch or stitch in the ditch right through here. Just go down, go here, and go here, and I'll be right back. Now, if you wanted to, you could do a 1/4 inch away from that seam right there on both sides, a 1/4 inch away from each seam on both sides, whatever kind of quilting you'd want to do. I'm just doing this because I just want it to be on here nicely and not be in kind of limiting the chance for a seam to start getting pulled on and pulled apart. The more quilting you have, the better your quilt's pieces don't get pulled apart. They kind of help hold them together. So let me do that and I'll bring you back. I think it's looking really cute. Okay, so I have these stitched down and everything looks great. Now I checked my stash, my fabric stash, and I did find this color right here because I have the layer cakes and I'd have to piece them together to put a border. So I just went and looked in my fabric stash and I thought this color went real well. So I think I'm going to do a border on all 4 sides with this. And let me get a ruler and we'll see how big. So it needs to hang over a little bit. So I would want probably 1 inch showing. So that means I need to add a 1/2 inch for the seam, which will be 1/4 inch from this fabric and then a 1/4 inch from this fabric. So if I cut this 1 1/4 inch, actually I'm going to need to cut it 1 1/2 inches. I'm going to go ahead and cut it 1 1/2 inches for both sides. I think this will take it 1 1/2 inches. And I believe these bottoms I can probably get by with I'm just going to cut 1.5 inches for all the strips. That way, anything extra I can trim down. It's okay. That way I know I'm going to have enough to come to the edge. This one won't need as much, but these right here all will need about the same amount. So let me get this, and what I'll do is I will just, well, let's just do this right here. Let's do this. And this is a fabric from Minnick & Simpson because the color is just the right blue for this. And I think it went along with, which one? I forgot which one it was. It might have been their newest one. And I thought it was perfect. So I'm not even gonna press this. I'm just going to cut 1.5 inches since we don't have to be perfect on this. It looks like I've got a pretty straight edge. Let's see. Like I said, I don't have to be perfect on it. Half. And I think I can probably get by with just 2 pieces. We'll see. And 1.5. Okay. Yes, because one of these will fit top and bottom, and then this is even shorter. So let's just cut this in half here. And we'll do the top and bottom first. So with right sides together, I am just going to let a little hang over on each side. I'm going to match up that seam or that raw edge right there, and I am going to put a pin in it. And I'll be sewing this edge 1/4 inch away. And while I'm doing that, I might as well go ahead and pin the other one and get them both done at the same time. So let's do this one. Right sides together. Let a little hang over each side. And I do like to give a little tug because if it's too loose, it will pucker on the top. And I'm going to go sew 1/4 inch away from both raw edges. And we've got those 2 on. Just give them a little finger press, and you can press this on your iron too. Just don't hold it down for a long time. It will be fine. And so now we need to figure out how long to make these right here. And again, I think I am just going to do an eyeball estimate here and trim this off. And I'm going to do an eyeball estimate there. And I'm going to go ahead and press this and then trim these off. So just a second, I'm going to get this pressed. Okay, got that pressed. Now, and I will tell you that I use my dish mats as hot pads on the countertop. You know, people think that it's going to melt. They don't have the Insulbrite in them. But you know what? I lay really hot casseroles right on top of them, right out of the oven, and have never had a problem with it. We have Formica countertops, and they're fine. Everything's fine. The mat stays fine. So do it at your own risk, but I've never ever had any trouble with it. So ironing on these, as long as you're just not holding that iron down for a long time, is no problem either. So what I'm doing is just trimming these down they're not bothering me while I'm sewing. And then I will take my strips and right sides together. Do the same thing, let a little bit hang over the edge. And we are going to end up trimming a little of this off. So if you have selvage right there, it's fine, unless you're going to need every bit of yours. You know, depending on the size of your mat that you started with will depend on how much you need. And again, giving it a little tug. And the same thing over here. And let's just add this one again, right sides together. Let it hang off of both edges. Pin it down, give it a little tug. And pin it down again. So I'm taking this to my sewing machine and sewing 1/4 inch away from each of these raw edges. Okay, so I went ahead and pressed the sides back. I got those all on, and just let me trim these down just a little bit so we don't have so much hanging off. A lot of this is going to come off anyway, but just to look a little bit nicer for the time being. So what we're going to do now is we have a choice. We can either go ahead, trim this down and put the binding on it, or we can start working on our faces. And I think we're going to go ahead and start working on our faces. So what we're going to be doing is going ahead and putting the faces on first, and then I'll put the binding on. So here is my orange fabric, and this is some, let's see, it's Joanna Figueroa's fabric. I can't think of her group. Fig Tree. It's Fig Tree. I was like, Figo, no, that's a different company. Fig Tree. So this is a Fig Tree line. I think it was one of the Halloween lines from several years back. And I thought this orange went nicely with this blue. So I've just got a couple of different colors. And so what I'm going to do is I am just going to get a piece of our Heat and Bond. And this is the Heat and Bond Light, not the heavy duty. If you get the heavy duty, it's going to be gumming up your needle and it'll be really frustrating. The Heat and Bond Light sews through really nicely. And so let me just cut off what I think I might be needing. And what I'm going to do, let me grab my presser mat. Okay, I've got my presser mat and my iron is right here too. So we'll just do this right here. And what I'm going to do is I am going to lay it so that I can get several different fabrics on here. So let me open this one up. I think I'm just going to lay it down like this, and I think I'm going to get a silicone mat. And so this silicone mat will protect my ironing surface and not let that sticky stuff get on it. So let's just put these side by side. We'll have all different sizes and shapes for noses. You can do all of your noses to look exactly the same, but I kind of like to do a variety. Let me trim this one down here. And we want this to be adhered to the wrong side of the fabric. So I'm looking to see what would be the best. If I do that, let me hold on to that one. We'll do this one in a minute. I'll get 2 of these and 1 of those. and just press that on there like so, following the directions on the back of the package. And as you can see, this right here overhung, but because I have a silicone mat, it doesn't adhere to the silicone mat. Now, if I press that on my regular canvas mat, it would stick and we would have a mess. Okay, so let me cut this off. And I think I want to go ahead and do these two fabrics too. So we'll just get a little bit more. And I can save this piece for something else. So let's stick this on here like so. And again, make sure you're adhering that to the wrong side of that fabric. Okay. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to set this aside, and I am just going to freehand cut the nose shapes. And you can make your pieces on paper first and then cut them out, or you can do what I'm doing, or you could draw them on here, but I think the noses don't have to be perfect, and it's always fun to have them kind of different shapes. So I always like to have the top part rounded like it is stuck in the snow, like that. And then the bottom part, this one's kind of got a funny angle. So that one can go like that, like he's looking up. And let me grab my buttons here. And I've only got 2 or 3 kinds of buttons, but they're all the ones I have that match. I'm just using as pairs. So I can kind of determine how I want the face to look. If I want him to be looking, you know, like straightforward, it would be like this. If I wanted him to be looking a little bit to the side, it would be more like that. So I would just go ahead and I'm just going to iron this piece on, but let me take this paper off the back. And I just use a needle or a pin to cut it, and then it will pull right off, so I don't have to spend hours trying to get the edge to loosen. Oh, you know, I think I might have it go like that. So I think I'm going to iron that one right there, just like that. And there is my first nose on. I can then later on, when I have finished with everything, I can add my buttons. So I can have him looking whichever direction he wants to look. You can have the eyes far apart. You can have them there, put them close together. Whatever you want to do, higher up, lower down. It is all sorts of fun. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut out all 6 noses, adhere them down, and then I'm going to go to my sewing machine and I am going to applique stitch all around. I will use a blanket stitch and just go around so that it is all adhered, and these will be completely washable. Now, if you want to do hand stitching, you can do a blanket stitch all around. If you want to do just a straight stitch, just go in about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch in and do just a straight stitch all around. You can also do a zigzag stitch and just go over that seam, just making sure you take a good enough bite out of that carrot nose that it won't unravel. But there's all sorts of ways you can do it, and I'm just going to do the blanket stitch with the sewing machine. So when I come back, I will have all 6 noses down, and I will have them applicate on, and I'll show you what I have. All right, so I've got my noses all embroidered down, and I think they look really cute. I'm going to do the eyes at the very end after I have my binding on, but that part is easy to do. I also took and did a basting stitch really close to the edge. I actually sewed on this side really close to the edge of this mat just to hold that down so that now we can trim it. And if you find that this fabric right here is kind of a loose, I don't know for sure what exactly it is, but it gets hung up real easily in the feed dogs. If you find that yours is getting hung up in the feed dogs and kind of dragging a little bit, you can always use paper, or tissue paper is what I use because it's a lot thinner and it pulls out a lot easier. But just put a piece of tissue paper on the back and then sew on the front, and your feed dogs won't be getting snagged in this. I usually don't have any problem with the kind that is like the other side of this. What did we say? Like a terry cloth type fabric. But for some reason, this kind of snags them a little easier. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just putting my straight edge right up against that edge, and I am taking off the extra fabric. Now I notice that my mat has a curved edge, and so if I keep a curved edge on here, I can always square it off if I wanted to, but if I keep it a curved edge, I will probably, I want to say bias binding, but I think it's an easy enough curve that I can get away without using bias binding, but bias binding would definitely make it really easy to do. Now, if you have not bound any small project like this, I have a video on how to do machine binding on these, and I'll put a link to it in the description box below, and that way you can know exactly how to attach your binding. I figured if I just had a video that just showed exactly how to do that, I wouldn't have to walk everybody through the steps each time. So just go to that if you're new to putting on a binding. And so I am just getting those corners just like so, and then flipping it over, and there's what it looks like on the front now. So I am going to make, I think I'll cut 2.5-inch binding. I'll decide whether I do bias or not. Again, if I just wanted to square it up, if I wanted to square it up, I probably should have just gone ahead and squared it up and not added a binding. So I'm just going to add a rounded corner binding, and I'll decide whether to use a bias binding or just regular and just work it in. But I'm going to put the binding on, and I'll go ahead and also put on my buttons for the eyes, and that is just such an easy thing to do. Just decide where you want your eyes, and then just go from the front to the back. And these have 4 holes, so you'll go crisscross in the front and just put your buttons on, and then you could even glue them on if you wanted to. You could use your hot glue gun and glue them on. And here we have our finished January dish mat of the month, and I think it turned out really, really cute. I did go ahead and put on sewn eyes, and of course the binding turned out just fine. I did not use bias binding, and it worked fine. So if you have a gentle curve, you can probably get by without using bias binding. If you have a straight curve, just follow your regular binding and that tutorial that I shared with you in the description box below. So I hope you enjoyed our last and final edition of our dish mats of the month. And again, this is January. We'll be having a tea towel of the month coming out really soon. So I hope you stick around to see that. And thank you so much for watching. Again, if you're not a subscriber, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe. Also, don't forget to like and share. And as always, I hope to see you back here soon. Bye-bye.